It's likely if you clicked on this video, you are considering buying a Range Rover. Don't. All right, well, you're still here, and so we might as well go over it. There's 3 reasons that you could be here. 1, you think Land Rovers look cool, and you're not alone. They do look very cool. 2, you're a masochist who enjoys buying a horrible car and attempting to make it into a good car through many, many trials that will drain your bank account and all of your patience. For 3, you just bought a Range Rover and thought, how hard could it be? If you said yes to any or all 3 of those, you're in good company. I have a problem that I buy cars that are horribly broken and aspire to make them into daily drivers. I also think that Land Rovers look cool, and most of all, I had a friend call me a couple of years ago, literally 2 years ago, and asked me if I would fix his Range Rover for him, and I said, how hard could it be? Now, anytime you make the statement, how hard could it be? It's gonna be unbelievably hard. Quick backstory so you know where we're coming from. This is a family heirloom car. All of the kids of this family learned to drive in this car, and it got parked at a shop. The shop couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. They put it in the back. It ended up having like a tree fall on it or something. Water got in through the sunroof. That messed up a bunch of electronics. It molded the interior. The shop sold the transmission out of it, cut a bunch of wiring out of it, sold the wheels off of it. The bumpers and stuff were dented. There were dents put in it from the shop. The paint is faded. The sunroof, like I said, leaks. None of the power windows work. None of the speakers work. The radio is not there anymore. Nothing. The dash is broken. The wood is completely rotted out. It is as bad as this car can get without being completely rusted apart. Now, on that matter, it didn't have that much rust. One of the floor pans was rusted. That's normal in these things. They hold water like crazy just to top everything off. And but other than that, it was solid. I don't know if you could call it that. Decrepit is what I would call it, and it needed absolutely everything. Now, originally I thought this car would take about 6 months. It ended up taking 2 full years. If you follow the channel, then you would have seen a video that I posted about 8 months ago, I think now, saying it's almost done. I'm gonna finish up a few things and then we'll be done. Well, I finished those things. I put decals on it. I fixed the brake lights, which did not work. I fixed the air conditioner, which was a giant job. It just never wanted to work. I fixed all of the pulleys, which didn't align anymore because of the engine I had to put in it. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I changed the tires out. I changed the shocks out. I fixed the bumper because it was rubbing on the front right tire. Just a lot of little things that needed to be done, and they are finally done. The car is absolutely complete, and lucky for you, I have kept a record. So I started this car 2 years ago. I thought that it would be profitable. I needed to make some money. YouTube wasn't really doing it, and this job came into my lap because no one else wanted it. Should have been a red flag, but I said, how hard can it be? And I took on the job. Now I'm gonna show you my spreadsheet. I've been keeping up with this. This gray list is a list of the parts that I had to buy to make this Range Rover correct. Over the past 2 years, I've installed all of these at least once, some more. It keeps going. 147 individual entries, more than that, because some of these entries have groupings of parts, and every single part and price was tracked. And I'm gonna share that with you today to show you how much it cost me to build a reliable Range Rover. Now, it is reliable now, and I think I should say reliable for a Range Rover. It still has the all aluminum pushrod 3.5 liter or 3.9 liter V8 that's in it, but we updated all the electronics that commonly fail, completely replaced the fuel injection system, and we will get to that with prices. Now, what I'm gonna do for prices is over here on this side of the screen, I'll scroll down this list. Instead of like animating every single one, I'll just show you my spreadsheet right here, and we'll scroll through as I read them. Now, I'm gonna go through the list first because I think that's probably why you're here, is to see how much it actually costs to do this kind of job. This is a cheap restoration, just to be, so you're aware. And it was expensive, not just in money, but in time, the amount of time that's in this car. I stopped counting at 500 hours, so that gives you a good idea. And I stopped counting because I was depressed. All right, so here we go. Getting the Range Rover from Birmingham, where the shop was that had it, back home was $230 just to tow it back home. And then I had to get a parts car, because if you have one Land Rover, you need 2 or 3. And so I bought a parts car for $3,000. It was a very solid example, same color and everything. It was a long wheelbase, but it was rusted out all underneath. So it had a bunch of parts that I could use, although it was not really a usable vehicle. $3,000. Fuel to go get that was $224. Trailer rental was $100, and then I paid myself $200 for the round trip, about a 12-hour round trip. It took forever. All right, then we roll into working on the car. Engine maintenance, that is going to be thermostat gasket, thermostat, water pump gasket, oil pressure sender, and a switch, temperature sender, PCV valve, PCV hose, oil filters, exhaust manifold gasket, oil pan gaskets, motor mounts, crank seal, timing cover seal, idler pulley, dizzy cap, dizzy rotor, spark plug wires, belts, valve cover gaskets. That was $357, and that's just an engine refresh. That's get the engine out, let's do all this stuff while it's out. Next, I got a intake manifold and a gasket for $446.37. I know that's high, but that is for the carburetor style intake so that we could convert it to a different type of EFI. From there, we bought our EFI. It was Holley Sniper EFI, along with an MSD6AL digital and the 8910 TAC amplifier, which allows you to run MSD on a Land Rover 3.9. That was $1,467. Then we got an MSD high vibration coil, same one I run on my 911, $74.48. Then an intake plenum to go on top of the Sniper so we could use the factory intake. That was $71.85. And then a rear drive shaft. The new parts car was a long wheelbase, so the rear drive shaft didn't fit, and the shop that had the car before had stolen the drive shaft. So I had to buy a rear drive shaft. That was $118.79. Did a leak down test. That was $93 to have one of those performed. Head gasket set, head bolts, timing chain, engine cleaning products. So I bought a bunch of like degreaser and stuff. That was $50. I don't think I said this. Head gasket set was $101. Head bolts was $43, and the timing chain was $25.01. Then we did cam, lifters, and cam gears. This was all from the Wedge Shop, or TWS Motors. And it's just a hopped up cam and upgraded cam gears just to fix a common problem on these engines, a common fail point. That was $503.60. Then I got some gasket remover Roloc discs, $22.74. That was to clean off the heads and stuff. They work really great. There's a bunch of information on the internet about that. You can decide if you want to use them or not. Had to get a new ignition switch because there were no keys, $69.12. I had to get some oil dry because we rebuilt the engine, so that was $19. I put that on there. Cylinder head machining, so I took the cylinder heads, had them go through them. That was $260. Water pump and gasket was $56.20. Thermostat housing was $13.57. I had to get a new housing to reroute the upper radiator hose, so that's what that was. I had to actually make it. Custom coolant outlet, also made that. That was $35. Custom coolant hose, also made that, $39.22. Block thread repair, $871. So this was a threaded, a thing that had been cross-threaded in the block. I tapped it out and fixed it. That was $8.71 for the bolt that I fixed it with. Coolant sensor adapter, that's $27. That was to adapt the coolant sensor for the Sniper to the intake manifold. Speedo cables and the starter were $176.42. Then we had to do an engine bay coating, which is $42, which is just some like rust proofing for the engine bay. Multi-post battery terminals were $45.25, so I could kind of isolate all of my different things that were running now, like the MSD and the Holley Sniper, all of that. Battery cable, starter cable, and engine ground cables were $41.03. The alternator had to replace that. It's $147.35. 1/0 AWG wire. This was for grounding straps that I had to build. $60.94. You'll notice I'm building a lot of things, not a lot of parts for these in the States. Fuse block was $16.73. That runs all of my engine electronics. All the new stuff runs on a standalone fuse block just to make it easier to diagnose problems. Solder shrink connectors was $18.35. That was a waste of money. Don't buy those things. They are garbage. Transmission mount hardware, $15.18. Transmission crossmember and mount, $11.32. I found a deal on that. Don't remember how. Temp wire connectors and hardware for the Sniper EFI. So that's $28 worth of temporary connections that I used, that I made so that I could test the Sniper before finalizing the wiring. Miscellaneous hardware for the wiring was $4.49. Holley fuse box harness was $30.76. The battery and the battery connectors were $338.68. I used a Optima yellow top, so pretty expensive. 75 amp relay was $37. 20 amp breaker was $14.50. And then another 20 amp breaker was 14 and a half. I got some other breakers, but I ended up sending them back. So they're on here, but I took them off. And the temp sender for the gauges and the lugs for power wire to a 75 amp relay were $38. That was me setting up my switch power to the new fuse box. Break-in oil was $20, getting close, right? We're not close. AN fuel line and fittings were $38.87. Rover to AN adapters for the fuel lines were $27.36. More hardware at Lowe's, $16.36. Exhaust manifold repair and resurface. Machine Shop did this for $80. Had to get a new fuel pump. That was $86.38. Intake gasket thread repair. Sorry, not gasket, but intake thread repair. There was a thread that was messed up on the intake. I had to fix it. New fuel tank, that was $332.64. Manifold studs, $28.08. It's adding up quick. Coolant fuel line clamps and coolant bungs, $63.64. Belts and coolant hose clamps, that was $79.99 for specific belts and clamps for the Range Rover. Let's see. Coolant and power steering fluid was $30.78. New cross member, rubber mount, hard mount, and torque converter bolts and nuts. This is all for the transmission, $35.71. Transline modification, had to modify my transline because they didn't work between the 94 and the 89. They changed some stuff, so I had to have it modified. That was $60 because I had to have a shop do that. It's a pressure line. 4 more trans bolts and rivets for the floor was $14.12. Wiring loom and loom tape was $67.89. Had to build my own wiring loom. Automatic transmission fluid, power steering fluid, and power steering additive was $44.51. 4-inch flex intake. This allows me to run the Holley Sniper EFI with the factory intake kind of box tube thing. That was $43.17. Intake clamps were $12.50. Wire and terminals was $21.98. This is more wiring than I have to do to get everything to work. The materials for repairing the floor pan, I built that from scratch, $67.02. Rust restoration materials, so this is Evaporust, rust primer, rust sealing paint, $69.78. Set of BFG KO2s, 4 of those was $856. The mount and balance for those was $103. I bought some test fabric for my headliner. You guys might know this, but I made a custom headliner for this car because I couldn't find one for a short wheelbase, so we cut the long wheelbase down. Had to get some test material for that. It was $64.75. Wasn't the right color. Ended up finding the right color later. We'll get to that. Fuel cap. Had to get a new one of those. $53.95. Headliner glue. $37.38. Oil pressure gauge. So I got an electronic oil pressure gauge because by this time I had blown up the first engine. It seized itself after about an hour of running. The one that I went through. And I had to get a new engine put in. I'm not sure. We'll get there in just a minute. But I got an oil pressure gauge so that I could see what my oil pressure actually was. That was $56.99. Wood refinishing products, so I pulled the wood grain out of the parts car, completely resurfaced it and refinished it so that it could go in the new car because it turns out Range Rover wood grain is very expensive. That was $61.45. Headliner wind lace, I use this for, if you don't know what wind lace is, you can Google it. I don't even know how to explain it. $10.25, I had to tie up some stuff with it basically. Seat material, $759. The owner of this car wanted a very specific material for the seat. It was very expensive, so we got it. New seat backs were $200 because the old ones were moldy and torn and messed up from everything that happened to this car. The third engine was $600. So the first engine that was in it seized up. Before I even got it in the car, I couldn't get it unlocked. The second engine is the one I did all the work on, put it in. It was a 4.2 liter, I think, whatever the bigger one was. It seized after about 2 or 3 hours of running, completely killed all my hopes and dreams, and then I bought a third engine for $600. I bought a second transmission, or a transmission as well to go in the car. It was $600. Bought those together. The labor to have the seats recovered was $800. At this point, I couldn't put another engine in this thing. I was just completely spent. I was over a year, I think, into the project at this point. I just couldn't do it. So I paid someone to do labor on putting another engine in and getting parts for that. It was $1,435. An oil pressure adapter for the new gauge was $24.21. The seat switch repair, I don't know if you guys know this, but Range Rover seats tend to fail because of a very complicated switch they made in the 80s. And the switches are expensive. They tend to be bad. You can only buy them used. You can't buy new ones. So I just designed a new switch and made that. That was $25.28 for the repair, and then $147 for all the parts. We had some laser cut parts and stuff. They look good, they work good, it worked out. The radio was $183.28. Did a new radio. The headliner final fabric was $92, so this was when I knew what I was going to do, had figured out how to modify and recover the headliner and all that. It was $92. The new dash vents, bought some 3D printed ones off of eBay for $36.72. The new dome light covers inside were $18.36. The fuel sender, which I had to buy a new one of, was $74.90. It broke shortly after. Got a new one on the way now. That's the last job. The AC compressor and dryer were $238.04. Switch bezels were $37. Aluminum repair strips, which are some strips I used to repair some of the broken plastic in the interior that I couldn't find like replacements for, but I needed something to strengthen it. So we do some aluminum and some plastic welding there. $35. Sandpaper, 20 bucks. Let's see. I had to tow it to Birmingham, it was about an hour and a half away for paint. That was $180. Let's see, spray paint for final assembly was $30. That's like black spray paint that I use just to like touch things up. Let's see, I paid some people to help me actually do some final assembly and paint. That was $46. Cleaner for the final assembly was $19, like wax and grease remover and stuff like that. Sunroof sealant was $18, so I decided to just get rid of the sunroof. These things all leak, and with the rust problems that Range Rovers have, it's, I think, best to just seal that joker up and be done. The material for the C-pillars was $20. I rewrapped the exterior C-panels. They have like some boat vinyl on them. That was 20 bucks. Gas struts and C-pillar glue was $73.33. The headliner fabric, this is the third time I've redone the headliner. I had it color matched professionally because I wasn't happy with the second one. That was $109.18. Then the paint job. You guys probably saw that video. It did pretty well. It was $2,900. Mounting tape, headliner glue for the sunroof cover. I designed a sunroof cover in CAD. Had it plasma cut actually. Should have had it laser cut, but I had it plasma cut. And then made like a blanking plate just to block the sunroof off. That's all I'm trying to say. That was $32.32. Accessory belts, fog lights, and decals, that was all $272.25. The Hunter decal was $20. The speakers, I put new speakers in this thing, that was $123. I had to buy all new window motors, that was $184. Plug housings, that's something that I pulled off the parts car, so that was free. Wire terminators were $10. Fiberglass supplies for the rear deck. There was a carpet kind of rear cover in the back. I fiberglassed that to, it was falling apart, so I fiberglassed it, made it better. New back glass, that was free, pulled it off the parts car. Door panel clips were $10.95. I had to buy insurance on this car while I was working on it. That was $244 for 6 months, I think. Headlights were $40, had to do those, replace those. Fuel lever sender fix, I took this to a shop and had them fix the fuel level sender, and they did, mostly. They fixed the wiring because there was a wiring issue. $160. Custom exhaust, $190. Battery hold down, $10.99. Trans kickdown bracket, $17.93. Window tint was $499, which I thought was insane for window tint. Lug nuts were $11.83. AC refrigerant and oil, $115. Pulley alignment spacers were $45. I had to realign all my pulleys because if you guys didn't know, the late model Range Rover 3.9s and the earlier model like 80s, 90s Range Rover 3.9s have different pulleys, different crank shaft links or something, and so I had to space every one of my pulleys out so that my belts would line up. That was fun. Hardware was $22.77. That's for that. Grade 8 bolts for all of the pulleys was, well, I got one actually. I ended up buying all of them, but that was $5.64 for the first one, and then I spent another $30 I think on that. AC retrofit kit was $32.84, so I converted it from an R12 unit to an R134 unit while I was doing all the AC work. More AC hardware was $25. The new AC belt and relay was $31. Valve core and trans fluid refrigerant. Oh, sorry, those are three different things. Valve core for the AC compressor because it was leaking. Trans fluid and refrigerant, $50. I had to buy more refrigerant. Radiator, $200. My radiator sprung a leak while I was driving. Go figure. Bought an aluminum one for $200. Shocks were $218.91. Pretty good price for shocks. New floor mats, $181.40. Spare tire retainer, like the screw that holds the spare tire on, $53. More interior hardware was $18. That was miscellaneous screws and stuff I needed to hold everything together. Wiper fix, painting the bumpers and painting the lugs. That was all stuff I did with the stuff I had, so it didn't cost me any money. New AC lines. Had to have my AC lines redone because they were leaking. That was $240. That was just to have them made. I pulled them out and reinstalled them. That was fun as well. More refrigerant, $70. Wipers, $10.05 or 50 cents. Fiberglass resin and paint. This is more work on the rear deck. Was $50. Pulley brackets was $100. I had to buy more metal basically and more fabrication for the pulleys to get them to line up perfectly. That was fun as well. I had to have the tires flipped because I originally had them installed with the white letters out. Owner wanted black letters out. Just miscommunication on my end. That was $140. The fuel cylinder gasket was $21.50. I delivered this car once already, and the owner went to fill it up, and fuel spilled everywhere. So the cylinder gasket had to be replaced. I did that, $21.50. And then mud flaps were $78. Whew. That is what it costs. Now, how much is all that? That was a long list. The total number for parts alone and labor on the paint job and labor on the engine, $22,823.03. $22,823.03 in order to make this Land Rover more reliable. There you go. That's how much it cost me. I'm sure there's someone in the comments that could do it for cheaper. I could probably do it for cheaper if I did it again. I've had enough pain for 2 years, so I'm going to not do it again anytime soon. The final question, and this is really for subscribers, people that are really into the channel, is why in the world did I take this project on in the first place? At the time, we were struggling to make money on YouTube, and so I had to get some jobs in to make money, and I thought this would be an easy turnaround. I had just finished the Mustang from hell that I did before it, the white Mustang. It made me no money, but I thought I learned a lot of lessons. Turns out, didn't learn enough lessons, and so I learned all the lessons on this car. That's why I did it, and that's why I've also taken a break from YouTube. That's what I was doing, and I was just trying to find ways to make money, and this was one of them. That was not a very successful attempt. But that's where that came from, and I'm so glad that I'm done with it. The next thing is, you guys want a shop tour and you want to know about grip. I've got a grip video coming up. I just collected a ton of footage over the past 3 years. We've been building this thing for 3 years, kind of secretly, and it's turning into something really awesome. And so I'm going to share it with you guys. So there's a video coming on that, kind of documentary style, which will be cool. And then the shop tour will happen as soon as my office is done. I'm working on my office right now, getting it sealed up. And then once I get it sealed up, I'll kind of give you the shop tour. I think you'll get a better vision of what it's going to be and how I'm going to use it. So that's coming, as well as some Christmas videos, stuff that I'm building for my kids that I think you guys are really going to enjoy too. Last week I got covered up with Thanksgiving stuff, traveling, family, everything, so that's why we had to wait a week to put another video out, but we're back on normal schedule now. And I'm going to backlog some stuff, hopefully, so I can get through Christmas posting weekly, at least once a week, and not get kind of thrown out of whack by traveling and family and things like that. But that's life. That's how this stuff goes. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't buy a Land Rover, but if you do buy a Land Rover, follow some of these steps and you can make it a pretty good car. And they are cool, they are fun to drive, but don't buy one. But if you do buy one, follow these steps, but don't buy one.